Legs tight, deep breath. You're on top, breathe. 1, 2, breathe. Drop the shoulders, breathe. 1, 2, breathe. Squeeze your legs, squeeze your butt.
I pointed my telescope at another galaxy.
If the Earth were to suddenly stop spinning, that abrupt change in motion would cause everything to go flying. The Earth's rotational speed is its fastest by the equator, where it's about 1,000 miles per hour. If that momentum stopped suddenly, imagine people and trees and houses being launched sideways at hundreds of miles per hour. And it wouldn't just be things flying through the air. Moving rocks and buildings would trigger earthquakes and tsunamis. And the atmosphere would continue its momentum around the stationary Earth, so that wind would just flatten anything else. So if the Earth suddenly stopped spinning, there's no hope for us. And if somehow anything managed to survive, the world would be awful, and I'll explain why in part 2.
I wonder how many dead one.
Saturn is cool. Saturn's cool, but may I introduce you to Super Saturn? This planet, J1407b, is 10 to 40 times the mass of Jupiter, but its ring system is 200 times the size of Saturn's. The ring system consists of over 30 rings, and each of them is tens of millions of kilometers in diameter. Scientists are able to study these rings really well because they're so big that they form an eclipse in front of its star that lasts for weeks. So as the starlight shines between the gaps, they can study it really well. The last time this happened was in 2007. These gaps in the rings indicate that moons may have formed from the material in that orbit. Unfortunately, astronomers expect that in the next several millions of years, more and more moons will form from this material and the planet will no longer have rings. But right now, if this planet were to replace our sun, its rings would extend out past Mercury. That's not Saturn, that's Neptune. NASA just released this new photo of Neptune taken by JWST, which shows its rings in incredible detail, but it shows a lot more than that too. Some of Neptune's dust rings haven't been seen in 30 years because they're so faint. Last time that anybody saw these rings was in 1989 when Voyager 2 got incredibly close to Neptune because that was the only way it could see these faint rings. These two photos were taken when Voyager 2 was only 280,000 kilometers away from Neptune. This was taken from over 4 billion kilometers away, which shows just how powerful JWST is. Now, Neptune in general looks pretty dark, and that's because it has methane gas in its atmosphere, and methane gas absorbs red and infrared light. JWST photographs in infrared light. That's why it doesn't look like this. Neptune does have high altitude methane ice clouds, and those show up really bright. And this is the craziest part. Neptune has a 164-year-long orbit, and right now its north pole is is faced away from Earth, so we can't see it. But you can tell from this image that it's surprisingly bright up there, so it'll be a fun surprise for when we can see it. Neptune also has a vortex at its south pole, so who knows what's at the other end. And in the same image, JWST was able to capture 7 of Neptune's 14 known moons. Neptune's biggest moon, Triton, looks incredibly bright, and that's because it's literally covered in a frozen sheet of nitrogen, so it reflects 70% of the sunlight that hits it. I just hope this photo makes people understand how underrated Neptune is.
If the Earth was the size of a basketball, the moon would be the size of a tennis ball, which is a fun fact to share with people. But to give you some more context, this is how big the US would be in relationship. So it'd be like Atlanta, Georgia, out to Vegas, something like that, which is kind of cool to think about. But what blows my mind every time I think about it is how big the moon orbit would be if it was at this little tennis ball scale. So do you think it'd be like a foot away, 3 feet, 5 feet? You'd be wrong. It's actually going to be 23 feet out here. 139,000 miles. This is how far away our little moon would be, which is kind of crazy to think about. The Apollo astronauts took 3 days to get there on their rocket. Way the heck out there. Tiny little space rock sitting in our gravity just way out there. Next time you see the moon up in the sky, what I try to do is picture how big it is, like in relationship to the Earth, like the US. We're trying to picture how far away it is. It like gives me a pit in my stomach every time. It's super, super cool. It's a little bit sciencey nerdy. If you're on a date, it's super romantic to talk about it in that way. At least I think so. So if you want to learn more about this kind of stuff, give me a follow because this is what I love to talk about.
For the first time, JWST has imaged the only other object in the entire solar system with a dense atmosphere and current seas and lakes and rivers on the surface. The object is Saturn's largest moon, Titan. And the photos are special because Titan's atmosphere is so dense and hazy that it's really hard to see through it to see features on the surface. But JWST photographs in a wavelength that allows us to see through the haze. Okay, I'm gonna show you the photo. That is a moon of Saturn. That looks a lot like Earth. What you're looking at right now is a giant sand dune, a methane lake, 2 clouds, and a mysterious glow. This is another view from JWST, and scientists were able to follow up and take more photos of the clouds from ground-based telescopes, and they were able to confirm that Titan has seasonal weather patterns, just like Earth. Astronomers are still trying to figure out exactly what this bright spot is, and if it could possibly be related to this vortex we've seen at the South Pole. And for fun, I'm going to show you a couple more exciting photos. This is Hubble's view of Titan. This is a composite image from a spacecraft flying really close. This is another composite image made from a bunch of close-up images. You can actually see the seams between the photos. And this is the only photo taken from the surface of Titan before the spacecraft lost power after only 90 minutes. Here's what would happen if you took your spacesuit off on each of the planets. Mercury fully depends on where you are. If you're on the hot side, you're burning to death. Cold side, freezing to death. But if you line yourself up in the Mercury sunset, you can live as long as you can hold your breath. So, 2 minutes. If you took your spacesuit off on Venus, the pressure of the atmosphere would crush you, and this would happen while you're literally vaporizing from the heat. So you would survive the 1 second until your head flattens, and in that 1 second, you would smell rotten eggs from the sulfuric acid in the clouds. Next up is Earth. You'd probably be fine for a couple of years. Now, Mars is cold, but not cold enough to freeze you instantly, so you could probably last about 2 minutes before you suffocated. But during those 2 minutes wouldn't be pleasant because the liquids in your body would start to bubble, including your blood, due to the low atmospheric pressure. Now, on Jupiter, which is my favorite planet, you would be crushed, melted, and vaporized all at the same time. You wouldn't even last 1 second. Saturn would do the same thing as Jupiter, and if there was anything left of your body on either of those planets, your body would descend into the planet. You would be swallowed by the planet. I don't know who's taking their helmet off on Uranus, but if you did, you would suffocate on the smell of rotten eggs while you froze to death. Neptune has the highest winds in the solar system, so after you asphyxiate and freeze, your body would fly around the planet until you sunk deep enough to be crushed. In my opinion, Earth is the best for human survival, but I'm welcome to other opinions in the comments. Bye.